Welcome to The Explainer. So, today we're digging into a pretty radical idea about progress. An idea that says what we often think is a tragedy is actually a natural, maybe even necessary step forward. It all kicks off with a simple story about two stores, but believe me, it ends with a prophecy for the future of all of humanity.
All right, let's just dive right in with this question. It's a story we've all heard, right? This big, shiny new store rolls into town, and suddenly the small local shop is out of business. And our first reaction, our gut reaction, is to see that little shop as a victim. But what if that's totally wrong? According to the perspective we're unpacking today, the small shop isn't the victim at all.
Okay, so this whole argument kicks off with a scene that's probably familiar to all of us. You've got this small shop, right? It's been part of the neighborhood for, say, 20 years, a real fixture. And then, bam, a big modern store opens up right nearby, and suddenly the old shop is struggling. Our instinct is to feel bad for them, isn't it? But this perspective, it really challenges us to look past that first feeling. And this is where the argument really starts to take shape. It completely reframes the whole story. It's not a story about an attacker and a victim. It's about earned success. Think about it. The old shop had 2 decades to become a cornerstone of the community, but it just stagnated. The new store didn't win because it was some kind of predator. It won because it listened. It saw what people needed, better service, a cleaner space, and it just delivered. So from this viewpoint, its success isn't aggression. It's just the natural outcome. So here's the bottom line, the crucial point. While it's definitely tough for that one shop owner, no doubt about it, the community as a whole actually benefits. They get better service, better products, just a higher standard of living. And in this view, protecting one business that stopped evolving actually holds the entire community back. It's a pretty harsh take, but it's a logical one about how progress works. Okay, so let's take that idea and scale it way up. What happens when it's not just a single store that served its purpose, but an entire community? To really get our heads around this, we need to look at a specific concept from Korea called a daldongne. So a daldongne, it literally translates to moon village. These were communities often built up on hillsides, so they were closer to the moon. There were places for people who were starting out with absolutely nothing, and they had a very specific, almost sacred purpose: to be a launch pad. Their entire reason for being was for one generation to pour every last bit of energy and money into the next. And this right here, this lays out the central conflict, the tragedy at the heart of the argument. The parents, they succeed. They do exactly what they set out to do. Their kids get educated, they become successful, and they move on to better lives in modern apartments in nice areas. But in doing that, they leave behind the very people and the very place that made it all possible. The mission is accomplished, but the launch pad is left totally empty. And this leads to a conclusion that, honestly, can feel pretty jarring. From this perspective, once that land, that moon village, has fulfilled its duty of launching a new, successful generation, its job is done. Its purpose is complete. Just like that old corner store, it's now natural for it to be cleared away for redevelopment, so something new and better can be built in its place. The land has served its higher purpose. But okay, that brings up a massive question, right? Why does this abandonment happen? If parents are sacrificing everything, why do the kids just leave? And this is where the argument pivots. It moves from society and communities to something deeply personal, offering up a really provocative and frankly kind of uncomfortable critique of human nature itself. Wow, that is a really stark claim. The argument here is that when adult children visit their parents, it's not out of pure, selfless love. No, they visit because they need something. Maybe it's advice, maybe it's money, a place to crash, or, and this is maybe even more cynical, they visit to avoid the social shame of being seen as a bad son or daughter. The visits are framed as being almost completely transactional. Now, when you first read this, it just seems like a flat-out contradiction. How can humans abandon their parents, but people do not? Well, it all comes down to the idea that a human and a person are 2 totally different states of being. Okay, so let's break this down because it's the key to the whole philosophy. We are all born as ingan. You could think of this as our animal self, the part that's driven by instinct and self-interest. This is the human who acts selfishly. But the goal of life, according to this view, is to become saram, an enlightened, fully realized person who acts for the good of everyone. So the reason we abandon our parents, it's because most of us are still stuck operating as ingan. We just haven't evolved yet. All right, so if the problem is that we're all just instinct-driven ingen, then what's the solution? Well, this perspective doesn't just point out a problem, it actually makes a prophecy about a radical shift coming for the future of humanity.
And this next idea is just as challenging as the last one. Chio, or filial piety, is a huge deal in many cultures, right? A cornerstone. But the claim here is absolutely wild. That everything we've called chio throughout all of human history has been fake, a performance, an attempt that's born out of obligation, not from any real understanding. The argument is that the true law of chio hasn't even appeared on Earth yet.
This coming true Hanyo is supposed to be completely different. It's not something you have to force yourself to do because you feel like you're supposed to. For these enlightened Saram, it will be as natural as breathing. It's a law of nature, practiced by people who genuinely understand their place in the world and their deep connection to their parents. And all of this builds up to one final, really grand prediction. The argument is that we are right on the edge of a new age for humanity, the Inban era, which means the age of the enlightened person. And in this new era, the true law of Hyo will finally emerge. And this new way of being, it's claimed, will start in Korea, before it's taught to and then adopted by the entire world. It's being presented as nothing less than the next step in our evolution. So let's just take a step back and recap this whole journey. We started with a simple corner store. We moved to the life and death of a moon village. We dove deep into a pretty tough critique of human nature, and we ended with a prophecy for a whole new era of humanity. It is a massive, sweeping vision that connects the tiniest economic choice to the biggest questions about our collective destiny. And that brings us all the way back to a question that's both personal and universal. Look, whether you buy into this perspective or not, it forces you to face a difficult truth. Progress often leaves people and places behind. This whole explainer offers one stark philosophical reason for why that happens, and what might come next. And it leaves us all to wonder, in our own lives, how do we balance the future we're building with the past that created us?